This morning I sent out an email to some of you, to the email addresses that I have. The new study we're going to start today in Bible study is going to be more of a focus study. We're going to be looking at a study called Servanthood Leadership. So what I'm going to do is, to those of you that have email addresses that would desire the lesson, I'm going to email it to you. For others who do not have that access, we will print out hard copies for you to ensure that you have the study. But we're going to start this study today after worship, entitled Servanthood Leadership. We encourage you, if you can, if you're desirous to join with us as we study this particular series. Hebrews 10, the text that was read. I want to read it again, and then we will give you the topic for this morning's lesson as we continue to exalt Jesus and seeking to be drawn closer to Him in 2022. My challenge to me is to focus more on Him, and in my focus on Him, I want to aid you in your focus on Him. And if we can focus on Him, we will be drawn closer to Him. I want to be clear that our drawing closer to Him is not just a verbal or audible communication. Rather, we don't just say it, that I'm closer to Jesus today than I was yesterday. It's not something I do audibly. It's something I do in my life. My behavior becomes more patterned like His behavior. My identity becomes more like His. My focus becomes more of His. My mind begins to change. And I begin to develop a mind of selflessness, of service, and sacrifice. I actually manifest the qualities that He manifested. It is through drawing closer to Him that I become more like Him. That is the objective, to help us to see Him in both in His identity as God. We're going to deal with family and try to establish families that are more Christ-centered. When Peter said, "Sanctify the Lord Christ in your heart," the idea was ultimately to elevate Jesus in your life. Again, that's not something I do just audibly. It's something I have to do in behavior. So just because I say Jesus is the head of my life does not mean it's true. There are those that will still say, "Lord, Lord," but not do what He says. We're going to look at service later in the year following this particular study as we talk about servanthood leadership. We're going to get to the third quarter of the year. We're going to actually stress even more service and being employed in the same. And then we're going to get into worship. But today, as we continue to exalt Jesus, I want to look at this section. I want you to see a few things in this section. And hopefully, it will cause you, if need be, to evaluate your present view of Him and make the necessary changes if need be. In Hebrews 10, in the chapters 10 and verses 26, it says, "For if we go on sinning willfully, after receiving knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sins, but a terrifying expectation of judgment, and the fire and the fury of fire which will consume the adversaries. Anyone who has set aside the law of Moses," he says, "dies without mercy on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. how much severer punishment do you think he will deserve who has trampled underfoot the Son of God and has regarded as unclean the blood of the covenant by which he was sanctified and has insulted the Spirit of grace? For we know him who said, vengeance is mine, I will repay. Again, the Lord will judge his people. It is a terrifying thing to fall into the hands of the living God. I want you to think with me on this subject today. Hashtag justice for Jesus. Hashtag. Y'all know the hashtag, right? Justice for Jesus. Justice for Jesus. If I were to say George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, among other names I could articulate, most would recognize those names and immediately connect them with police brutality. I am not making a case for their innocence or their guilt. I am just simply stating a fact that in communicating those names, it will automatically be, there will be a connection to police brutality. Now, whether that's a valid claim or not, I am not making that case. But at these events, it is clear, regardless of the position you take regarding these events, it is clear, and this is a fact, many were upset by the incidents. Many were moved to hostility. Many were angered by what was done and what was communicated through various media outlets. And there was a repetitive cry connected to all of these names, preceded by hashtag justice for, you fill in the blank. Justice for. It was at the hands of the authorities. Again, hear me, I'm not making a case. Either way, I'm just simply stating a reality without making a case as it relates to the voice of some. There was this cry for justice, and there were cries stating things of this nature, that those who are supposed to uphold law, those that have been delegated to protect the people, those that have been prescribed the duty and function of protecting and preserving the lives of innocent, are guilty. They have not upheld their lawfully given responsibility, and what we want is justice. Y'all heard that before? Today I want you to think about justice for Jesus. Because I'm going to argue that he was also in the hand of some authorities. And I can argue, and I can argue without doubt, his innocence, while at the same time seeing him fall victim to Pilate's brutality. The gospel records are not very clear as it relates to crucifixion. What do you mean? It tells us. Yes, it does. It doesn't necessarily tell us how crucifixion was played out. There was no need for the author to actually communicate how crucifixion was played out because they knew it. They knew how it was carried out. They knew the process of crucifixion. So they didn't have to articulate all of the details to the listeners, to the audience, as it relates to what all entailed. But as it relates to us, if we are not familiar, we got to do some research. We got to read. We got to study. What was it like to be crucified? What is the medium here? What all was involved in this particular brutal event? And why is it that Jesus fell victim to such a heinous activity? It is understood that they were stripped naked, stripped bare, publicly. They stripped him bare, wide open to the public. An innocent man. No doubt he was innocent. Born before all men. You talk about the beginning of police brutality. Those who are to uphold the rights of the innocent. They mocked him. Covered his eyes so he would be blind, and while at the same time slapping him and spitting on him, and he is yet, even at this moment, to see the cross. But they got him publicly displayed, naked, blindfolded, a crown of about 4 to 6 inch thorns piercing his head. Publicly displayed for all to see. Slapping him. If you the Son of God, tell us who slapped you. Spitting on him. And it was all approved by Pilate. Do you begin to see the picture? Are you trying to see the picture? Am I able to work through my mental fog and my own personal self to actually see what Jesus did for me? During these various rallies for George Floyd, Dale and Breonna, all these shouting the petitions. Who's petitioning for Jesus? Everybody got their mask on and their flags. Black Lives Matter. Justice for you fill in the blank. Where's the rallies for Jesus? Who's holding those? I know I got a man who's innocent. Who's petitioning for him? Where is his justice? You feel that yet? Who holds the banner for him? Where's the mamas crying for Jesus? Why the courtrooms are not being filled proclaiming gospel? Who's crying for him? Want to defund the police, but we will not defund our personal desires. Don't pay them, but I keep feeding my desires. Who fights for Jesus? Where is his justice? Turn our attention to our text. The Hebrew writer is clear. Now, we have to we got to set some context and make sure we don't make application to this text that may not be there. Point being made is this. He had informed them of who Jesus was and is. That's what he does through the preceding chapters of this book. His identity as the highest servant, in that he's God. He's higher than the angels. He's higher than Moses. There is no man like this man. He's higher than Adam. He's a greater deliverer than Joshua. He's a greater high priest than Melchizedek. There is nobody like him. And I just give you that audibly, but he explains details in this context that makes Jesus different. Primarily because they want to go back, they want to reject Jesus. Don't miss that. They want to reject him because of the pain that is connected to him. We're going to do something with that in just a few moments. They want to reject him because of the pain that is connected to him. I know that there is pain connected to him if I were to go and read Hebrews 10:32 through the end of the chapter. After he said what he said and what we're analyzing, he goes on further to explain to them the difficulty that they face in the early stages of their conversion. But the pressure connected to Christ is becoming overbearing. Now, I want to be clear that he does not give them a pass because it hurts. He actually tells them, if you quit, there is an eternal reality you got to face. He doesn't give them a pass and say, because of how hard it is, you have the privilege. God gives you the authority to quit on him. He never says that. He actually said, you need endurance. You need to build your strength back up. You need to go back and remember your first words. That's what he tells him. Nowhere in the Bible does the Bible depict the type of complacent and passive Christianity we have depicted for at least one generation. Nowhere in the Bible is that depicted. Nowhere. It's been a long time, and nobody has cried and petitioned and rallied for the justice of Jesus. But I'm going to show you in this text, there is somebody that's going to yell justice for Jesus, even if we don't. Jesus will get justice. And while we have the opportunity, we better fight for his justice also. For if we go on sinning willfully, the text says, having received knowledge of the truth. What are you talking about, Hebrew writer? I've told you how to properly respond to the Lord. I've told you. I've told you who he is and what you are to do with him. I've told you. Now, if you don't do that now, I want you to know that in your departure, in your apostasy, in your leaving him, no, you don't have hope anywhere else. The only sacrifice for sin is him. And his sacrifice has demands. And I've taught you what those demands are. Now you know, and now you are under obligation to either accept them or to deny them. Because I've told you about him. You're exalting Jesus, right? He says, reject him if you want. Ain't no more sacrifice for him, for you. But you do have something to look forward to. A terrifying expectation of judgment. And the fury of a fire which will consume the adversaries. Jesus is going to get justice. I can assure you he's going to get his justice. I can assure you Jesus will get justice. Jesus was innocent. He did face Pilate brutality. And Pilate knew it. Pilate knew it. Pilate got word that, hey, being falsely accused of being a threat to Rome, it got Pilate's attention. I need to talk to this man who's a threat to me. You got to know a little bit about Pilate to know that stone was a very immovable object. Check him in history. Pilate was only concerned about one thing, his position and his power. You got to read a little bit about Pilate to come to grips with who this person is. It's always interesting to me the type of men that God uses in his providence to bring forth his plan. God always shows that he's the God of all gods. And he uses men, and he knows how to bring arrogant and prideful, hard-hearted men down to their knees. And he will. Just keep being prideful and hard-hearted and arrogant. You're going to break. You're going to break. Sad reality is when he breaks you, you may not can come back to him. But you're going to break. History tells us that Pilate was so ate up with what he had done to Jesus that he committed suicide. He couldn't live with it. He knew he was innocent. Knew he was innocent. But Pilate had a reputation to uphold. And he's wrestling with the innocence of Jesus and his reputation. If you don't do this, John 19:27, you're not Caesar's friend. He's wrestling with his reputation and the innocence of Jesus, his own desires and Jesus. We may want to be careful before we begin to be hard on Pilate. Because Pilate may be more like us than we think. Or rather, we may be more like him than we think. We oftentimes find ourselves in dilemma as it relates to our own stuff and him. I continue to allow my desires to scream at me. Crucify him, crucify him, crucify him. And choosing a thief over an innocent man. Stealing Jesus' justice when I need to be petitioning for his life. His wife told him, man innocent. You better leave him alone. Pilate already knew that. And to try to justify himself, he said, okay, I know this man is innocent. So he's from Galilee. Well, that's Herod's jurisdiction, so I'm going to send him to Herod. Herod, I need you to deal with this man. What are you doing? What are you doing, Pilate? I'm trying to get it off of me. But you're the governing authority that's supposed to make the decision. You know he's innocent. Why not just release him? Let him go. He's struggling with his own fleshly desires and whether or not he's going to choose Jesus. Pilate already had enough issues with Rome. He didn't want more. If he let Jesus go, it's going to cause an entire uproar. And he got to deal with that. All of that is on his shoulders. While at the same time knowing ain't nothing wrong with this man. But to try to save his own back, I'm going to send you to Herod. Ironically, Herod sent him back. I don't find nothing wrong with him. But Herod didn't make a decision to let him go either. Feel that yet? See, it ain't until you start feeling this when you start letting yourself go. Pride gonna kill a whole lot of folk. Power, personal desire. That's what Pilate's struggling with here. Okay, Herod sent him back. What you gonna do now, Pilate? You gonna let him go? Well, bring him out. Hey, look here, I scourged him. Look at what I did to him. Bring him out into his courts. All the people in the city see him. Flesh hanging off his body. They done scourged him with the flagellum. The bone fragments in the metal have penetrated his skin and pulled it off of his bones. He innocent. Pilate, why are you scourging? Because I'm trying to do something to satisfy the people. They brought him to me. I'm trying to do something to satisfy them. So I can wash my hands and be clean of the guilt of him and still be friends with Caesar. What are you doing, Pilate? I'm in a dilemma. So what you gonna do? I know he's innocent, but I'm going to take him to my people. Y'all put that whip on him. They putting thorns, crowns of thorns, 4 to 6 inches through his mind, through his very head. We've cried over blackberry thorns piercing our finger. This man got 4 to 6 inch thorns penetrating the circular nature of his entire head. Face covered, slapping him, spitting on him, and he innocent. Where is his justice? Who's petitioning for him? Who's rallying for him? You wore your Black Lives Matter mask last time you held up the bloodstained banner. So you know what? I'm going to wash my hands of this. I'm done. I'm done. Before the water can dry off his hand, he let him have him. Kill him. Kill him. Having said at least 4 times, I find no fault in him. I find no fault in him. I find no fault in him. So the Hebrew writer says, you receive the knowledge of the truth. You go on with willful rejection of him. Know this. Ain't nowhere else you can go. Nowhere else you can go. There's no other hope outside of him. None. This is the knowledge. This is what he's informed them of everything Jesus accomplished for them and how it was accomplished and their responsibility to him. Now, I told you, go on sinning willfully. Guess what? Only thing you got to look forward to is judgment. What's interesting here is he makes a comparison. He says, when it came to Moses' law, we know we can go to Deuteronomy 19 and we can see the establishment of this concept of 2 or 3 witnesses. A man breaks the law, he falls into the hands of men. Stone him, isolate him, do whatever needs to be done according to the law of Moses for the one that was disobedient to that law. Deal with him. That's the law of Moses. Humans, men, y'all deal with him. We talked about this Wednesday, but I wanted to bring it up again in the General Assembly. I think we need to at least think about what he says. And he gives a strong warning here. Very strong warning. I want you to know that as we think about Christianity, it ain't this complacent, passive stuff we've been living for the last generation. I know it's comfortable to just come to an assembly, hear me preach or somebody preach and go through a Bible study, and hey, you feel like you've done God some service. You go through the 5 acts of worship. Can I be clear with you? You can go through 5 acts and never worship. I can worship and not put anything in the plate. My lesson ain't worship today. We're going to get to that later. You can be in this assembly and go through every act and never worship. But you believe here thinking you've done God's service while at the same time my mind is far from him. You call my name with your lips, Matthew 15, yet your heart is far from me. You can look around now, people sleep, eyes closed, not paying attention, don't care. It's a heart problem. Pride, arrogancy. But where's the justice for Jesus? Should I not be coming in here crying to him because of him? Appreciative that he allows me to come before him and worship. Now I go out there and run the streets for George Floyd, mad at the police and angry for a man that could do nothing for me. Nothing. Never met George Floyd, never will. That man did nothing for my life. I don't care about the color of his skin. But there was somebody who did all this for me because I had sinned. And he wasn't worried about my skin color either, because he died for all men. Some of you are not going to like this, but it's okay. That man that put his knee on his neck, if he come to Jesus, he can be saved. And while you fighting for justice for George Boyd, you better make sure you get Jesus. Because he can get Jesus while he in prison and looking down at you as he goes up with Jesus because you still fighting for George. See how manipulative and deceptive the devil is? Get our mind all distracted on nonsense. So the Hebrew writer says, and I know this not popular. Some of y'all don't like it. I know some of y'all Black Lives Matter folk, it don't matter. I'm a Jesus folk. That's who I am. I don't know the entirety of the situation. As a matter of fact, I can show you. I got letters here on my computer from Jeffrey Dahmer that was photocopied. And at some point in time while in prison, it is indicated in these letters he repented. He was actually baptized while in prison. He was. He ate all them folk, all them men, did all that eating. You see a Jeffrey Dahmer documentary on TV and you talking about how disgusting he is. What he did was wrong. What he did was foul. It was. But I serve a God who's rich in mercy. And if that man repented, and he died faithful, he's going to be with Jesus. You don't know how good you got it. But Hebrew writer says, okay, when they rejected Moses, men dealt with them. But here's what I want you to, he said, but in essence, I'm kind of paraphrasing. Now, if they received that type of punishment as men for rejecting Moses, listen to the text. This is the flow of the text. You know, how much severer punishment do you think he would deserve who has trampled underfoot the Son of God and has regarded as unclean the blood of the covenant, by which he was sanctified, and has insulted the Spirit of grace? So in other words, what's going to happen if a man rejects the Son of God? He may communicate him audibly, but his life is not reflective of loyalty. What's going to happen to that man? How about the blood? We're analyzing right now, just in brief, the bloodshed. The violation of both Roman law and Mosaic law combined brought him to Calvary. We'll not go through that right now. If you want, I got a book in my office called The Illegal Trial of Jesus. Very short read. You can read it if you want to. Legal Trial of Jesus. Got another book by a gentleman named John Stott called The Cross of Christ, and he actually points out some of these also, showing how these both the Romans and the Jews collectively violated both of their laws for one purpose: to kill Jesus. These were the laws that were designed, both the Mosaic law and the Roman law. These laws were designed to protect the innocent. I can take you to Romans 13, following Romans 12, and actually point out where Paul communicated that the governing authorities are the tools of God's wrath for the evil. The one that does good doesn't have to be fearful. That wasn't the case for Jesus. They didn't protect him. That's what they were supposed to do, and the very law he gave Moses was to protect his innocence. The fulfillment of the law is still love. Where is the love for Jesus? Where is the justice for him? So the Hebrew writer says, don't have proper regard for the Son of God. Don't respect the bloodshed. Grieve the Spirit if you want. So you ain't got to worry about falling into the hands of men. Because for this one, God said, this one is mine. Vengeance belongs to me. I got this one. This one on me. I let y'all have them folk who rejected Moses. But this one right here, reject my Son, his blood, and the Spirit. You reject them three, one or all, I got this one. This one on me. See, those are not passive words, are they? You know what? You human. God understands your heart. He knows it's hard. He knows it's difficult, and He knows the pressure you're dealing with. And just be loving and kind and merciful and compassionate. Ain't what He said. Quit on Him. You want to. See, we like that. Hey. Man, God is so loving and He's so good. He understands. We love that stuff. That stuff makes us feel good. While at the same time, we lost. Y'all all right? Made a statement about Pilate. We need to slow down. We talk about condemning him for what he did. Let's go to Luke 23 real quickly. I'm almost done. I'm almost done. Luke 23. Let's go to verse 18. It's Pilate still in his dilemma. This is Pilate in his dilemma, verse 18. But they cried out all together, saying, away with him, away with this man, and release for us Barabbas. He was one who had been thrown into prison for insurrection made in the city and for murder. Listen, this man stealing and killing. Stealing and killing. And that's what they want. That's what they asked for. 4 times. He innocent. I just beat him half to death. You can't even recognize him. His flesh is hanging off his body. He's naked. How much more embarrassment does he need to endure? What more do you want? Kill him. That's what we want. We want him dead. He don't fit our line of thinking. He doesn't let me be who I want to be. He doesn't elevate me. He doesn't give me what I want. While at the same time, he communicates what's best for me. What do you want me to do with him? Crucify him. Kill him. And here's the sad reality. Many of us probably could have been in that same assembly and been saying the same thing. Because right now, as we think about this lesson, if you're honest, you're struggling with something. Struggling with something. And you recognize there is something that continues to scream. Choose me over him. It's screaming at you. But another sad reality is maybe it's not screaming anymore. You've gone full-blown into apostasy. And your flesh don't have to scream at you anymore. You've given entirely into it. You can't even hear God's. You can't even hear that anymore. Your senses are dead. The Bible talks about that too. Text says, verse 20, Pilate wanting to release Jesus addressed them again. Listen, this is what he want to do. Don't miss it. He want to release him. You want to serve him. You just got a whole lot of noise in your head. Whole lot of noise you're listening to. I want to serve him. I want to do what he demands. But I keep hearing voices. And he said to them the third time, why? What? Verse 21, I missed that. But they kept on calling out, crucify him, crucify him. Why? What evil has this man done? I have found in him no guilt, demanding death. As a matter of fact, you hadn't found any guilt. Not just guilt worthy of death, you have not found any guilt. None. Therefore, I will punish him and release him. That's when they scourged him. That's when he scourged him. Doesn't go through in that. But he said, but they were insistent. They were insistent. They were insistent. They screaming, they yelling with loud voices, asking that he be crucified, and their voices began to prevail. Your flesh keep crying out, feed me, feed me, feed me, feed me, feed me. and it gets too overbearing, guess what you do? You listen. You know why? Because you're listening to the voices and not his voice. You give in like Pilate. You see yourself in Pilate? Right now, somebody's flesh is screaming. 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 We're about to have a study after this worship service to talk about serving him and others. Your voice is screaming. Should it not be your desire to learn how to serve better him and his people? But your flesh screaming. Who you going to listen to? Well, I got roast on, so let it burn. Amen. Let it burn. I said it. Let it burn. It's more valuable a roast that you paid $20 for or your soul that cost this. And Pilate pronounced, verse 24, and Pilate pronounced sentence that their demand be granted. What's their demand? Kill him. That's what they screaming. Pilate became overwhelmed with the voices. My flesh is crying. My flesh is crying. And he gave in. And he released the man that they were asking for, who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder. But he delivered Jesus to their will. But the Hebrew writer says, Jesus is going to get his justice. Jesus is going to get his justice. Now, you don't